Right, guys, welcome back. Super interesting segment today, actually, because we've spoken to you a lot about the costings involved for property, why it's a good time to invest in the market right now, what kind of fund allocation you need, what we can buy you in terms of the type of property we go for, what type of returns to expect. So we've gone through so many different aspects and nuances of the deal itself. One thing we haven't covered, which I'm excited to cover today, is how and when your funds get allocated throughout the journey of buying your buy-to-let property investment. Okay. And we've mentioned multiple times you need between 65 and 70K to get a deal done with us at Lifestyle Property to make sure that you have a buy-to-let investment that's giving you a great yield and great capital growth. But what most people assume, and it's normal to assume this, is that you need that 65 to 70K on day one. Okay. That is not true. And that is what we're here to talk to you about today. And Shiv, I think you've got an actual breakdown for us
I
of
do, yeah.
how those funds are allocated. But why don't you just explain why we don't need those funds on day one, just to give people context on how we actually run our process end to end?
Yeah, so the reason why this has come about is because there's a few clients that come back to us. Actually, these are existing clients, and actually, there's been one or two new clients as well who have come to us and they say the way that we want to invest in properties, we want to release equity from our residential property or from other investment properties that we own, and then we want to invest in property. So what they say is, well, my mortgage has come up for renewal in November, for example, so I'll do the equity release around then. So it'll be December, January by the time I have the money, and so I'm not ready to go ahead right now. I'll go ahead in January time. And I said to them, well, actually, what you want to do is you want to go ahead now. And the reason you want to go ahead now is because what people forget is that when you release equity from your house, so let's say, for example, you have a £200,000 mortgage and you're going to increase that to a £400,000 mortgage. It's the moment that the money hits your bank account, from that moment onwards, actually, from the moment that the money hits your solicitor's bank account, from that moment onwards, you're now paying interest on the extra £200,000. And let's say it's £200,000. I'll do my calculator here just so we can get an idea. So 200,000 multiplied by, let's say, for example, 4.5% residential mortgage. That's £9,000 a year divided by 12. That's £750 a month. So if you then start to look at investing in property, it's going to be costing you £750 a month until you can get that money invested into a buy-to-let property. And at that moment, once the money is invested, then that starts generating you a return. So imagine what we're saying is the money will come into your bank account at this point. You'll have to pay interest for all of this time until you actually get the buy-to-let property up and running. Once it's up and running, that's when it can generate you a return. And let's say the return is going to be, for example, I don't know, 7-8%, and you're only paying 4%, you're now making the bit in the middle. But for these months in between, until you've got the buy-to-let property up and running, you're having to pay the £750 every single month. So what we're saying to people is actually, instead of waiting until you've got the money into your account, because it's a very natural assumption that that's what you've got to do, what we're saying instead is that if you get in touch with us, we can time it so that we get your money from your residential refinance on this day, and then maybe a day later, a week later, but not too long later, we can complete on the property that you have that you're purchasing for buy-to-let purposes. And so that means there's not a huge amount of time between this date and this date. So you're minimizing the amount of kind of like wasted interest that you're paying. And the reason why, that we don't need all your money on day one is because actually there's a whole due diligence process that goes through. When we say we're going to buy a buy-to-let property, it's not just that you come to us and you say, I want to buy a buy-to-let property, and then the next day you have a buy-to-let property. There's a whole process that has to go through. This is very different from the stock market in which, you can just press a button and buy the stocks. This is a much more complicated process and actually involves, for example, you'll come to us and it will take us probably about a month to onboard you. And that includes collecting all your documents from you, making sure we can get a decision in principle, which is making sure that you can get a mortgage before we go and start looking for a property for you. So that's a month. It will then take us usually about a month to source a property for you as well. So that's for us to go out and find the property that matches your specific criteria, and we know that is a good property. It will then take us usually between 3 and 4 months to purchase the property. So we've got a month for onboarding, a month for sourcing, 3 to 4 months for purchasing. So actually, it's going to take you 6 months by the time you've actually even got to the point where you can actually purchase the property. And when you need the most of the money is at the end of month 6, basically. So I'm going to take you through the kind of payment forecast that we send out to clients so they can understand, when they need the money. But is there any other questions that you have before I take you through this?
one thing I was just going to add just before you show the outline of how this is all broken down is the other reason why we have a timeline to our process is because we do not hold generic stock of properties for our
Yeah.
investors. Okay, so this is super important, guys, because we're not just telling you, oh, we need 65 to 70K, and we're just going to throw you the first property that we've got holding in stock. We don't actually hold any properties in stock. What we're doing is bespoke sourcing
Bespoke.
to each client's needs, because client A could come in and say, I've got 75K. Client B could come in and say, I've got 95K. Those are two completely separate budgets, which means that they're going to require two completely separate deals. Also, we respect what our clients are saying. So if we say to our clients all the time, what's your maximum budget that you can go to? If a client says the maximum budget is 75K, we're not going to go and find a deal that's going to require 76 or 77K because
Exactly.
the client needs, and we will bespoke source within that budget. So I think that's just a key nuance.
And I think actually, just to go one step further on the bespoke sourcing, what if you look at kind of like large companies that do this? What the large companies do, it's really cheeky when you start to look into what they're doing. What they're doing is they are development companies. They are building blocks of flats, and the sourcing bit, as in getting you to buy them, is their exit. They don't care about you. They care about the money that they're going to make on these blocks of flats. And they've built them, let's say they've built them for, I don't know, £120,000, and they can now sell them to you for £160,000. Well, they're going to be making £40,000 in between. So they don't really care about the fact that they're going to charge you whatever 10 grand to source the property for you, because they're making a big chunk of it just by selling it to you at a particular price. And so usually what happens is the developers build a block of flats, for example, and the block might be 20 flats. And then they go and find 20 people that want, buy-to-let properties, and they say, here you go, you can have, 20, we'll sell 20 properties, and that's how we get our money. That's their exit. The worrying thing about that, though, is that on day one, all 20 of those properties need to be tenanted. So that there's a lot of competition for that. That tenant that walks through the door that says, I want to rent your property, they've got 19 other properties to choose from. So I think it's really important that we bear that in mind. But yeah, let me take you through the actual document so we can understand how we want this. I'm going to take you through it step by step here, Dipesh. So the first thing is this is the document that we send out to all of our clients so they understand how the numbers work out. And what we do is as we go through and we find them a property, we then update these numbers so they know exactly what the numbers are going to be. In this example, this is example payment forecast. In this example, the purchase price of the property is £150,000, which is kind of like the average of the properties that we buy. In month one, which is when we sign you up and we onboard you, you're going to receive our invoice. And at the moment that you receive our invoice, you're going to have to make payment 12,995. That's for our fee. We take our fee up front. And then what you have is month two, which is sourcing property. There's actually no extra money required at that point. Month three, which is purchasing, there's a little bit of money required. You're going to have to pay some the mortgage broker's fees. That's 500 quid. You're going to have to pay some solicitor's fees to put the money on account for the solicitors. That's 500 quid. So you're going to need £1,000 in month three, and on top of the 12,995, that equals 13,995. In month four, which is the second month of purchasing, so we have here onboarding, sourcing, and then 3 months at the moment of purchasing. In the second month of purchasing, we're going to require the survey fee. It's £450. I think it's now £500, but it's thereabouts. And what we're doing is we're now paying the surveyor to go and do a survey on the property. We don't need to pay them in this first month because we want to get some due diligence done on the property before we send the surveyor in. The surveyor then goes in, they do their due diligence, and they tell us what that number looks like. So that's £450 for their fee, and in the cumulative total is 14,445. And then what I want you to see is that it's only in month five, and actually I say month five, but that could also be month six because it does take 3 to 4 months to purchase property, not just 3 months. So at the end of month five or the end of month six is when you're going to need all the rest of the money, which is the insurance money, £200, the deposit money, the legal fees, and the stamp duty. So all of these additional bits you're going to need at the end of month five or the end of month six. So you can see here that actually you just need about £15,000, £14,500 before the beginning of month five, and you need the majority of it after effectively the end of month five or the end of month six. That's when you get paid the rest of it. You've obviously got to pay the legal fees. You've also got to pay the stamp duty, obviously, when you buy the property. This is when we buy the property. Once we've bought the property, we then obviously need to start the refurbishment work. And usually the refurb and PM fee is paid there. Obviously, once you've completed on a property, we want to start the refurb as quickly as possible. So that's when you pay the refurb fee. In this example, it was £10,200 for the refurb and PM. So that adds up to 67,845 in total. And then in month 7, we'll then let the property. You'll have to pay the letting agent's fees. And then month 8, we'll then have this settling in period. And you might have some utilities bills and some council tax costs. These are the costs that we had between completion and letting, but they come through obviously a month later. So you might have some of those bills and bits and bobs to pay. So in total, like in this example, it's 68,595 or thereabouts. So let's call it £70,000. But you can see that the majority of the money is not required until the end of month 5. And like I said, it also depends on our waiting list, because our waiting list, I've said here, we're going to start onboarding you in month 1. And sometimes that's possible. But really, right now, a lot of people are looking to get involved with the market. So actually, we have a bit of a waiting list. So it might be that this actually gets delayed. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because what I want people to start doing, let me just stop sharing this a second, is start thinking in their mind, okay, well, my refinance is coming up, for example, in the next 2 months. And there's no point me waiting. So let's say it's coming up 30th of August, September, let's say October time. And there's no point in then waiting a month or 2 months until the money comes out, which is going to be the 13th of December. We might as well engage lifestyle property people right now, because we know we want to buy another property. Yes, you need to pay us our fee, 12,995. And like I said, over the next course of the next couple of months, you're going to have to pay in total about 15 grand. So you're going to have some money in order for us to move forward. But you don't need the majority of the money until the end of month 5 or the end of month 6. So if we're on the 13th of August right now and you involve us right now, then September, October, November, December, January, February, you don't need the rest of the money until January or February time. And actually what we can do is, if you engage us right now, we'll use our mortgage advisor to release the equity from your residential property. And the reason why that's important is because they can then time when does the money come out from the residential property and when do we actually buy the buy-to-let property. So let's say, for example, like I said, in middle of October is when your refinance is due. You do that process and you get the money out, or you're ready to get the money out at the, let's say, middle of November. But then if your buy-to-let property is not due until the middle of December or the middle of January, the mortgage broker can just say, well, we'll just wait. We don't need to release the money today, because as soon as you release the money, I've said you're going to start paying this £750 a month of interest. We don't need to pay that. We'll wait 1 month, 2 months. If you wait 2 months, you save £1,500. Who doesn't want to save £1,500? Like, this is money that's in your pocket. So I think that's the benefit of engaging with us sooner and then using our mortgage advisor to be able to do the refinance, because then we can time everything so that it all lines up, and ultimately you'll end up saving money. And how much money are we saving? I did this exercise for a client of ours who's looking to buy 5 more properties from us. And for that 5, he's going to need £350,000. And we said, let's say he released the money today and then he came to us today. We would have to onboard him. We'd have to source the property for him, purchase it 3 to 4 months. And so it's at the end of month 6. So it's literally 6 months worth of, how much was the number? Let me just check again. So it's £350,000. And I did it at a 4.5% mortgage interest rate. So that's £15,750. That's £1,300 a month multiplied by the 6 months that it's going to take us to do this process. But if they didn't come to us and they did it the normal way, they would waste £7,875.
Crazy.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're having this Facebook Live, is to help people understand they don't need to waste £8,000. They can do it in a specific way, in a specific order, which means that we can then save them £8,000.
100%. And so the biggest takeaway for everyone listening to this is you can time your refinance on your existing property, or whether it's your own home or other investment properties, you can time that refinance so you're not having to pay interest, because you don't need that money on day one. And one other thing I will add to what Shiv's just shown you as well is where those funds actually get allocated. So first of all, every figure you've seen for all the professional services, all those figures include VAT. So you're not paying VAT on top of any of these figures, okay? The second thing is, after milestone 1, which is the lifestyle property people fee, the other fees get paid directly to the vendors and the suppliers, including the deposit for the property. That doesn't come to us. That's going to go to the solicitors that are helping us take your property through to completion as well. So when we're finding you and purchasing this buy-to-let property on your behalf for you, you are paying us for the service, but you're still going through the property purchasing process exactly as if you were buying your own home. And I think that's another thing to really iterate, because I know that we've had conversations, Shiv, with people who've unfortunately been told that they're going to be able to get a buy-to-let investment property, or been told that, you know, someone else can handle their funds for them, they've ended up handing over all this money to someone because they thought that they were going to get them a property. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's been a bit of a scam issue. And, you know, we're not here to name and shame anyone for anything either. But when you're buying a property through us, you're buying it directly for yourself in your personal name or your limited company, depending on what we help you decide to do. And those funds are being allocated to the professionals that are helping you buy the property. So I think that's another really important aspect of how our service operates. That
And especially, you know, we said like the majority of the funds you're gonna need at the end of month 5, which is, you know, the deposit, the legals, stamp duty, all of that kind of stuff. All of that money will go directly to the solicitor. It doesn't come through us. So when we say you're going to need 65, 75,000 pounds to be able to buy a property, you don't give us 65 to 75,000 pounds. You give the majority of that, like you said, to the solicitor or the mortgage advisor or the insurance broker, whoever it might be. The only thing that you really give to us is the lifestyle property people service management fee, our service management fee for doing that. And then obviously when we do the refurbishment project, we're going to have to pay the project manager as well. So those are effectively the 2 bits that you give to us.
That's it. Absolutely. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I think this actually been super clear, and Shiv, what might be a good idea from this point onwards as well is to show more breakdowns of maybe even deals that we've done where those funds have been allocated. So like a real life example on how those numbers were broken down and what we needed and when, just to kind of map over the example timeline as well. Just a bit more insight into how we operate.
And like I said, for every single one of our clients, once they sign up, we give them this example payment forecast, which shows them like this is what it's going to look like at the beginning. But then as we go through the process, we also give them like once we source the property, an actual payment forecast for their actual property. So for example, at that point, we'll know exactly how much the property is going to cost. We're going to know what the deposit is. We're going to know what the stamp duty is. We're going to know what the lettings fee is. We're going to know also what the insurance probably is going to be. We're also going to know what the refurb numbers are going to be. So we'll put all of those numbers in together so you can see how much you're going to have to pay out at what point for your exact property.
Love it. Guys, that's everything for today, for today's episode of The Property Perspective.